since we're recording in the evening, it's blueberry tea instead of coffee. I don't want to be up all night. But I still had to wet my whistle. You got your water bottle? Are you all hydrated and ready for a story?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, welcome back. We are going to proceed on to the next labor of Heracles, which, unless I am mistaken, is the sixth labor. So, am I correct? Is this number 6?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There was the lion.
Okay.
Naming lion.
Okay.
Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
Armanthian boar.
Yep.
Artemis's deer.
Yep.
The stables.
And now this one. All right, so Hera and Eurystheus were getting increasingly frustrated. And they figured, all right, if one monster at a time is just no big deal for Heracles, let's try to get him with hundreds of monsters instead. And so they sent Heracles to Lake Stymphalos, where he was tasked with getting rid of the Stymphalian birds. And the Stymphalian birds had been plaguing this area for a long, long time. And earlier you asked me what plaguing meant, didn't you? Do you remember what it means?
It means making everyone sick.
Yep, it can mean a plague is when everyone gets sick. And also, if something's plaguing you, it means you have a horrible problem that just won't go away. Like being plagued by having brothers and sisters, for example. All right. So, Heracles gets to Lake Stymphalos, and he realizes why everybody has been moving away for years. Because the Stymphalian birds had moved in, and they had moved in to stay. And we're talking about this enormous, enormous flock of birds. And it was a real problem. Because when the farmers tried to plant in the fields, the birds swooped down and gobble, 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 ate the seeds. Any crops that they did manage to grow, the birds swooped down, gobbled up the crops. And then do you know what they did to any of the crops that they didn't eat? Yes, that's her little sign language for poop. The birds pooped everywhere. The fields were covered in poop. The trees were covered in poop. People's homes and yards were covered in poop. And even the ponds and streams were getting filled with poop. So people were getting sick from that. And it got so bad that if you left your windows or your doors open, the birds would swoop into your house, gobble up your food, and poop all over the inside of your house. And that was bad enough. But that actually wasn't the worst part. Do you know what the worst part is? Okay. That is her sign language for sharp iron beaks, sharp iron talons, and sharpened iron feathers. The birds didn't so much hunt people, but if one got near you, it would slice you up just by being by you. And if it fluttered away, if you scared them away, their feathers might drift to the ground, but it was like a rain of razor blades when they fell. These birds were bad news. And the people had tried everything they could to get rid of them. But Heracles showed up and he says, you know what? I'm going to start from square one. We're going to figure out how to do this. And so the first thing he did was weave himself a giant net. And he tried tossing the net over a flock of birds in the field. And it worked. He managed to snag them all. But guess what happened? Their feathers just sliced right through the cords of the net, and off they flew. So I thought, you know what? If I can't capture them, I'll shoot them out of the air. And so he shot arrow after arrow after arrow, and every single arrow dropped a bird. But you know what the problem was?
Birdies. Arrows bounced off, and birdies got away.
So sometimes the arrows bounced off the metal feathers, sometimes they penetrated, and he'd kill a bird here and there, but it was hundreds and hundreds of birds. And once they saw him coming, they would hide in the trees, and they'd hide in the long grasses, And once Heracles left, they just go back to work again. And by work, I mean eating and pooping everywhere. So Heracles went back to the inn. He went back to the inn and he was hungry and tired, and the innkeeper was hoping Heracles would stay around and get rid of these birds. So the innkeeper offered to bring him a pot of soup. And so Heracles had a bowl set in front of him, and then the innkeeper grabbed a pot and a ladle. Do you happen to have a pot and ladle? And the innkeeper held out the pot of soup and ladled out soup into Heracles' bowl. But you know what was floating in the soup? Poop. And Heracles did not want poop soup. So he told the innkeeper to dump out the soup. So the innkeeper dumped out the soup, and then he was scraping out the pot. And Heracles had an idea. His job was to get rid of the birds. That was all that Eurystheus said. Get rid of the birds. And so Heracles grabbed the biggest pot that the cook had, and he slapped a lid on it after he filled it with a bunch of stones. And he had basically turned the pot into a giant, horrible sounding rattle. And then he took his wood club and he kicked open the door of the inn.
Wait.
What?
If I'm correct, it's a stump.
Well, excuse me. It's a stump? Okay. Apparently, she's in charge of the story now. It is a stump.
Lion.
Oh, but he smashed so many wooden clubs, he just kept on making new ones. So he had his pot. Where's the pot? He had the club. Where's the club? And what did he do when he left the inn? Don't forget the roaring. Can you roar? All right. He marched and stomped and roared and banged the pot, and he made such a horrible, horrible noise that he scared the birds away. And that was the sixth labor of Heracles done. Any questions before we end?
Didn't the feathers just come down and...
But what would protect Heracles from the falling feathers?
Doing, 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 doing.
The Nemean lion's hide, which was his impenetrable cloak of armor. All right. Good job trying to find a plot hole, but I had it covered. All right. Should we get ready for bed? So, have a good night, and I hope you find a good story.